What I'm hearing is that maybe more higher ed institutions need to operate like trade schools. Would you agree with a statement like that?
Yeah, I think you will get a very negative reaction from a lot of schools that say, we're not a trade school. Trade school is bad. That is the stigma, Hope, that it seems to be attached to anything that is practical knowledge, right? But I agree with your fundamental premise. The schools that you're referring to, these so-called selective schools, I would call them a luxury item. It's like a Chanel handbag, right? It's high-priced, very hard to get, and you feel very proud when you get it, right? It serves a tiny fraction of the population in the best of days. So I think we need to focus on the people that are not going to get into Harvard, not going to get into Yale, and we need to give them a path to the middle class. And that's what we're focused on.
Michael, it's great to have you with us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You have this very unique vantage point where you can talk about the intersection of education, AI, and upskilling in the workforce. But first, would love for you to give the audience a sense of Cengage's overall portfolio of products and services for those who are not as familiar.
Absolutely. Happy to do this. And I'll try to make it, in education, often people make things complicated. I'll try to keep it very simple.
Sounds good.
We do two things fundamentally, Hope. One thing is we have an online learning platform that is used by 16 million students every single year. 16 million students and over 200,000 educators. And what they do is, that is the resource that they use to teach a class, the class that you've taken in college, the class that you've taken maybe in high school. And the second thing we do, which goes to the intersection that you talked about, is we actually take that platform and then we deliver online skills training. So we deliver the entire learning experience. We hire the faculty, we use our platform to teach students, and they end up with a certificate that gives them a ticket to basically get a job or a better job in the labor market. All of this, the whole company is under the umbrella of education for employment. And that is really, really important to us, that focus on the employment and the labor market.
When you think about the current education system, and you've talked about this on other podcasts, I get the sense that you think there is a bit of lacking in the current higher ed, curriculum, which maybe doesn't equip students as they are graduating and going into the workforce with the actual correct or accurate or suitable skills for jobs. Is that still the case, or do you actually see higher ed systems moving more toward where the needs are for employers?
A little bit of both. It's still the case. It's absolutely still the case, and I'll give you one hard data point. We are doing an annual survey, and over 70% of faculty thinks that they are actually preparing the students for the labor market. Only 35% of the students actually think that when they are fundamentally in the labor market. So there is this disconnect, what the education system does and what the labor market needs. But to your second point, things are improving. They're not great, but they are improving because institutions are taking this to heart and are trying to actually be more responsive to the needs of the students who invest a significant amount of money to get that education and would like to get a return for it. I also think we need to break out of the rigidity that both you and I have experienced. You either go 2 years to college, you go 4 years to college, and then you get a degree, and that's your path to the middle class. Most of the people that I talk to have degrees and they, multiple degrees, etc. But we've left a large portion of the society behind, and that creates an enormous skills gap, and that skills gap creates a wealth gap. So we need to fix this for the majority, not only for the minority that end up getting a college degree.
Well, one part of it is the cost. The other part that, at least in our day when we were going through school, it was where you went to school, and that mattered a lot. And what I'm hearing is that maybe more higher ed institutions need to operate like trade schools. Would you agree with a statement like that?
Yeah, I think you will get a very negative reaction from a lot of schools that say, we're not a trade school. Trade school is bad. That is the stigma, Hope, that it seems to be attached to anything that is practical knowledge, right? But I agree with your fundamental premise. Now, the schools that you're referring to, these so-called selective schools, I would call them a luxury item. It's like a Chanel handbag, right? It's high-priced, very hard to get, and you feel very proud when you get it, right? it serves a tiny fraction of the population in the best of day. So I think we need to focus on the people that are not going to get into Harvard, not going to get into Yale, and we need to give them a path to the middle class. And that's what we're focused on.
If we can be transparent, both you and I went to Chanel schools for graduate school. We did not stop at undergrad. And I have to say, on a personal note, having gone through a state school as an undergrad, there was a stigma around that even amongst, certain, friends of mine and groups. But how quickly can that stigma change? Because that badge of honor is still something that I see that's still like a jumping off point for a lot of people to say, hey, you know what, this person seems credible. So what else needs to happen for the stigma to go away, and why is it important for the stigma to go away?
I think, first of all, I would say the people that go to Harvard, the people like you and I that go to Chanel type of schools, right? God bless them. It's going to continue. They will continue. And this part of the system is going to continue. But it's not going to fix our societal problem, because there are way too few people that get admitted to these schools and then ultimately get a degree in these schools. So what we need to focus on is to really break open the pathways that you have to actually get to a meaningful, dignified job. And that dignified job can be an HVAC technician. The dignified job can be an electrician. An electrician, 2 years after getting a certificate, on average makes $63,000. What's wrong with that? Why are we looking down on this? Why is this not acceptable? So I think we have a huge opportunity now with technology to teach people online skills and get them certificates that get them better jobs. And by the way, they can do it for the fraction of the cost that you and I incurred. Fraction. $3,500 and you get a certificate. And you got to almost guaranteed a job if you get the certificate in the right job category.
So I want to connect it to the actual conversations that you're having. When you present this argument to schools, whether it's, you got to be more like trade schools, or you got to offer more courses and certificates that allow a direct bridge between education and the workforce, what's been the response? Is it already clear to you that schools are hearing this message and adopting it because of the urgency now in the labor market?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, but not across the board. There are about 4,000 colleges in the United States. I can't say everybody is hearing the message and getting it, but we see more and more schools getting it. And let me make it very, very simple. And let's take a college that is in your neighborhood, Rutgers, right? Rutgers gets a lot of traffic from highly motivated people that says, I want to get an education because I really want to advance in life. Now, only a fraction of those will actually end up taking a degree at Rutgers, because the cost is too high. They already have a job. They might have kids. They don't have the time to be there permanently on campus. Those are the people that we as Cengage take, and we help Rutgers to actually develop online programs that we can say, hey, we've got an alternative for you. Why don't you take an online course for, let's say, 3 months, 4.5 months, to become a farm tech? Those are the people that are helping the pharmacist fill prescriptions. Huge demand for those types of jobs. It's going to cost you $2,500 to $3,000, and you will almost guarantee at the end of that, getting that certificate, have a job. What's wrong with that? Rutgers is making some money, and in that respect, they're serving their community, which they should.
It still feels to me that you are, disrupting the traditional way that Rutgers used to make money, let's say, if we're going to stick with that example. I mean, don't the economics, the economics kind of fall out of favor for them with cheaper courses, with more accelerated curriculum? Is that not the case?
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So what we've seen in higher ed traditional degrees, right? We've seen actually an improvement of enrollment over the last 2 years. It's plus 1%, plus 2% after many years of declining enrollment. So degrees are still in demand. And degrees are the right answer for a lot of people. Degree was the right answer for you, was the right answer for me. It's the right answer for a lot of people out there, but not for everybody. So we want to just open up the aperture and say there are alternatives. And by the way, when you take that alternative path, you might end up with a degree down the road, but maybe not at 24, maybe at 35 or 36. So that flexibility of the system is something that is new and that's exciting, and that frankly, universities like Rutgers and others are embracing. Arizona State is one that embraces this mightily. So there's a lot of good momentum right now.
How are the students, as they even enter college, getting their head around this? I mean, the labor market and the employment needs are changing so rapidly now that this question of how do I prepare my high school, how do I prepare my college student for the workforce, like that answer changes year after year and even within the year. So what are the fundamental skills or the fundamental core pillars of education that no matter what happens in the labor market and the economy, that all students at the youngest of ages should be really primed to learn and to adapt and to really incorporate into their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I would absolutely echo is it changes rapidly, right? And AI is almost like a turbocharger of that change. And that's where our online learning platform comes to play, right? We have the ability as Cengage to actually update the curriculum, update the syllabus, update what's being taught in these schools in a very, very rapid fashion, much more so than the traditional faculty member that you and I have seen in the front of the class who's taught the class for 10 years the same way, introduction to economics, introduction to psychology, etc. What hasn't changed is there are a few fundamental skills that still matter greatly and will always matter. And they tend to be called, and I don't know why on earth they're called that, soft skills. They are called, those are the skills about critical thinking, the ability to motivate people, the ability to communicate with people, rally, a team together. Those are skills that are learned and taught often in colleges, but they also can be learned and taught online. So I do think we have a lot of more flexibility to teach those critical skills. In addition to that, what is needed often for specific jobs is very specific skills, right? Yeah. Where you have, even down to the individual employer has a different way of actually creating a production line or creating a service. And we now have the ability to get both much more personalized and customized in those specific quote unquote hard skills.
Yeah, I understand that, and I want to go back to the soft skills in a second, but the lag between, let's say, what the employer needs today versus where the pipeline of talent and where they ultimately come in and graduate, like that could be 4 to 8 years depending on which age student we're talking about. So I guess, again, going back to my question just to try to get at it a different way, if you are a student currently in college and you're a freshman, the skills that people we're talking about today publicly and vocally might be very different by the time they actually graduate. So in those 4 years, what should that freshman be doing if they spend 1 year learning one trade, let's say, or getting one certificate, but then by the time they come out, it's like something completely different? I mean, it almost seems like it's inevitable that there's going to be some money lost because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
That feels devastating.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I think the answer to this is we should stop thinking about there's a 4-year period in which you sit in a chair in a college and learn something, and then you go out in the labor market 4 years later, and then you figure out whether it's relevant. I think we need to and can intertwine those two systems much more. So if you are in a 4-year college, you should be asking the college, what do you do to help me get internships, externships? What do you help me to be, to really understand what is going on in an employer around me or even in another city? And those kinds of offerings are becoming much more prevalent for colleges, and it's almost expected. Northeastern is a good example. They have pioneered this approach for many, many years. Southern New Hampshire pioneered this approach. Arizona State pioneered this approach. So that's one thing. The other thing is your education doesn't stop when you graduate at 22 years old from college. You should then expect that when you're in the job, that either your employers offers you new ways of learning new things, which is increasingly, prominent, or that you yourself actually look at maybe there are alternative pathways. Nobody goes anymore to a company and says, I'm going to be here for the next 40 years. So that flexibility is also happening in the labor market.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing, and one of my questions was going to be, are we compressing the timeline between work and education by having these students enter the workforce through these externships and internships as they're going along in school? I think you would agree with that, and maybe colleges are really interested in that as well, to compress that timeline, like I said. But then you have the added challenge now, as you know, of AI. A lot of white-collar jobs, especially at the entry level, are being replaced. Or I would say that managers and companies would like to see them reduced in a way that they can be automated by one senior data engineer or senior, person using AI. And so as that pressure is now entering in, I almost feel like then what we're talking about, these opportunities for internships, are they also going to decrease because companies just don't have the appetite to invest in that talent pipeline because they'd rather spend the money on that senior person?
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing this right now, but I would say it's the early stages, and several things are coming together. First of all, people are still worried about, employers and companies are worried about the economy, the economic outlook, right? I mean, we're seeing this boom in the stock market, but it's essentially driven by 10 companies, and the rest of the companies are kind of flatlining to declining. So a lot of companies are nervous about the outlook for their business. Secondly, there is this promise of AI, and it's a promise. It's not a reality right now, which says that I can automate a lot of things. And you saw the MIT study probably that showed a lot of companies that tried didn't really get a big return on investment on their AI investment. But there's enough uncertainty for them to say, let me slow down. And that's what we've seen in the data. So companies holding recruiting of entry-level positions steady or slightly down. It's not a falling off the cliff, but slightly down. I think it's a bit of a transitory phenomenon that we're going to see. This is very peculiar to this point in time. I think most likely what we're going to see is the education system training people in how to use AI. I like this famous quote, is like, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you're going to be replaced by somebody who knows AI. And I think that's definitely true. So we as an education system need to do this. We are now offering specific courses about AI, but more importantly, we're using AI to teach how to become a freight forwarder or how to become a phlebotomist, right? So you can use that and really make it part of the workflow. And the second thing I think we're going to see is with that training, the companies, as the economy shifts, I think they will realize that they need those skilled labor, the skilled labor going forward. So I don't foresee that there's a massive replacement of jobs, but I want to see is reskilling and upskilling.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier about soft skills. Cengage has a new employability report out, and this idea of soft skills is very interesting and not very nuanced for me as I see people talking about it. I'm reading directly from your report here, where you talk in this one section about the widening gulf on workplace skills priorities. And in one part of this is on page 6 of the report, it says, when asked which skills they expect recent graduates to bring to the table, employers believe graduates should be equipped with immediate practical competencies, while educators are focused on helping learners develop higher level soft skills. But, in some ways in our conversation today and many, many conversations that I've had about this topic, like soft skills always comes up as like the top skill. So can you share with me why there's a difference in what this report is saying, that employers think that there should be immediate practical competencies, with what we're all hearing all the time, which is that soft skills are most important?
Yeah, I want to take a step back from the employer education system and just look at the recent generation of graduates, Gen Z. And I think I'm a huge fan of Scott Galloway, and
Yes.
I think he has put his finger on it. There is a generation that has grown up in a way, in a digital environment on social media that either made it less necessary or less tempting to actually have human interaction. And, soft skills are not just taught in a school or in a college. Soft skills are taught at home, around the kitchen table. Soft skills, most importantly, are taught when you're hanging out with your friends and you're doing things. You're going to a football game or you're going to some other activity. And I do think that phenomenon of this massive sucking sound of social media has deprived a whole generation of a good way of developing soft skills. And now other people need to step in. The college needs to step in and do more of that. The workplace needs to step in and do more of that. So I do think against this backdrop, that push for soft skills and the ability to execute and really hone those skills has become more urgent.
Just to play the other side of this a little bit and thinking about our own mortality. I mean, the generation that is coming up now, they are going to be the future, right? I mean, soon millennials will be talked about like boomers. And Gen Z even will be talked about millennials. I mean, we're just talking about age groups. That's all we're talking about at the end of the day. They're fun names or whatever. But something I think about a lot, because in my line of work, right, in media, there's a lot of pressure for us to do short form and, dance while talking about the news, whatever the case may be. And, and I think about this idea that maybe they don't have the soft skills, the people who are actually really good at this stuff, the Gen Z. And I think about, do the soft skills matter for these people at all when they're going to just judge me based on my social media presence? And the bigger picture question behind that is also, like, we're talking about all the stuff that is important to us now. We're in a certain age group, and people who are in charge of us and give us money are of a certain age group, and that was important to them. But is it not going to be the case that if this is what's important to the younger people, that we should actually get on board and learn their language and be part of their community, because they are ultimately going to be the ones driving the economy after we're all gone. And so I wonder about that a lot, is that we give a lot of, we give them a lot of crap, right? We do. And say they don't know how to talk to people. They have the Gen Z stare. But on the other side, I think, well, maybe this is just what the future is going to be like, and we're outdated. How do you feel about that?
Amen. I would say, as a reaction, Hope. And I think you're right, but I don't think it is a black and white question. It's not we are adopting their value system or they're adopting our value system. This is more about the conversations, meaningful conversations that we have with each other. I have 3 boys in their early 20s. They're entering the labor market. And we have spirited conversations, like literally every week. We happen to live in the same town together in New York City. So, that is the kind of dialogue that we got to have, where I've told them, I said, look, it's really great to read a book. They haven't read a book in 10 years or something like that.
They just graduated college. They didn't read a book in college?
Exactly. Well, it's I don't know. You ask them, So I didn't. They read books as they were forced to, but books for fun, they don't do. And there's a lot more short form. And there's lots of things I can learn from them. Lots of things they can learn from me. I think this is a broader philosophical question, is we need to rebuild communities that have these cross-generational ways to exchange. We used to live, and not us, not you for sure, not even I, lived in a multi-generational household. But because of that communication has been lost and has been replaced by communication with, hundreds of thousands of people that are somewhere around the globe on social media, but that don't have the same impact that your grandma and grandfather had on you. So, and I will say, last thing I'm going to say on this, I do think we see a pendulum swinging back. My kids, for instance, they're not that enamored with social media anymore. And we're actually seeing decline of usage of social media. If you look at the data, and Galloway actually reported on some of that. So I think we'll find our way in the middle somewhere, but I love your notion about cross-generational dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just think that you're seeing what is happening in Nepal. You're seeing, what happened to drive Zohran Mamdani to win the New York City mayor's race. I mean, he's driven by this new generation of people who have felt like kind of repressed and looked down upon, and you're seeing their true power. And this really is where the spirit of my question is coming from, is, are we in danger of doing that and ignoring kind of the palpable change that's needed? And sometimes I talk to, a Gen X, workplace expert, and they're saying to me, maybe the millennials and Gen Xers had work-life balance all wrong. Like, we were pushing ourselves too hard, and the way that Gen Z are, living is better. And you can make the argument we wouldn't have the economy or whatever, but that's again where the spirit of the conversation is coming from in the soft skills question specifically, because I often think, while you and I may be really good getting into a room and making small chit chat before dinner at a fancy reception, they're much better at answering, DMs and comments and that's how they're communicating and building community. And so I feel like we all need a little bit of everything, but that's sort of like a bigger question just about communication and all of that in general.
Well, it's
I don't know
about
if you have anything.
communication, and Hope, I would add to this, it's about community, right? You want to.
Yeah.
I think what's not different between us, the generations, is that we all want to feel that we belong to a community. And your reference to Mamdani and that people felt priced out of New York and I couldn't live here anymore, and I don't have. That is a manifestation of that. We want community as human beings, and that has never changed. And my approach to this is, as a leader of a company, is I ask people, I ask the people that we hire that are 25, say, how would you solve the problem? And I get a lot of good ideas from them. And likewise, well, because they're closer to the generation of the customers that we serve. So when we ask them sort of, how would you teach a certain subject matter? A 20-year-old has a different perspective than a 40-year-old. So in that respect, I think that dialogue is so crucial and will become even more crucial.
But I would like to hear some examples of like the differences you're hearing and trends in the differences that you're hearing.
Short form and visual, like videos, use more videos, use more something that I can visually absorb. I don't want to necessarily sit there and read 5 chapters of a book in order to get something. But on the other hand, you also hear from Gen Z, some of the stuff I would actually like in print. I would really like to calmly sit down and read something actually helps my understanding. So that dialogue is very important, but short form is becoming much more prevalent.
And what types of content would they rather see in print than in a short form video?
It's mostly around more complicated subjects, complicated things to teach, like, a math concept, or a particular idea in psychology. They just want to have the multimodality. It's not just a quick video about it, but it's something that what we're hearing is like, if I read something on paper, I have an easier time remembering it rather than if something comes to me on video. It's good for certain things. If I want to fix something, I want to fix my motorbike, or I want to fix something in the household. But if I want to really understand a concept, sometimes it's better to go slow. And this is coming from 20-year-olds, not from 45-year-old faculty.
Well, that's really hopeful, I think, for a lot of people. And it brings to mind this idea of like the multi-screen experience. I mean, we hear and talk about it a lot for entertainment, but it sounds like in education, that multi-screen experience is just as important, where they need the multimodalities. I want to get to some very specific questions about what you're seeing in the labor market and really by sector, based on the demand in the courses that you have and you're offering and the conversations you have with executives and educators. Where are workers most likely to be hired based on skills versus their brand of education, their degree?
Yeah. The biggest category is healthcare. And the biggest category is high-touch healthcare jobs, home health aides, farm techs, people that help other people in a tangible way when they go through a difficult period from a health perspective. Massive demand and limited supply of skilled labor. The second category, and I think we've all experienced, is trades. Try to get a plumber. In Manhattan, it's virtually impossible. You got to beg, and then you don't know how good they are, et cetera, and then you wait, et cetera. So there's huge demand for those skilled labor, whether it's plumbing, HVAC, electricians. So trades is the next category where there is an enormous amount of demand and very limited supply.
And what about for the jobs that still favor the brand of education and the degree? What are those jobs?
Those jobs, I mean, the jobs for degree people have not massively changed. Anything I would say that has more practical application is more in favor than a, just general degree. So the more you can actually specialize early, the better. I know that goes counter the general belief I'm in college to learn everything. And I don't think it's a, flip of the switch type of thing, but I do think learning specific skills that are in the labor market while you're for 4 years in college, which you should absolutely do, is a good additional thing to consider. And, those job categories are some of them are fallen out of favor, like coding. Everybody said like, oh, my kids need to learn coding. Well, I wouldn't recommend that anymore because coding is going to get automated and is already being automated. But there are lots of other jobs, in terms of, for instance, anybody that can organize a group and deliver a project management, huge amount of demand on those in those skilled labor markets. Advanced manufacturing, big event with our drive to reshore some of the jobs, which we will. I think there's big demand in those categories as well.
What degrees are best for those two jobs, just because you mentioned them as examples?
I think anything that has a significant amount of project management in it is good. I think anything that has, engineering is not going to get out of favor at all. Architecture not getting out of favor. A law degree not getting out of favor. If anything, getting more into favor as we become more litigious. But as I said, the role that you play and the skills that you got to have, they're evolving. So I would not discourage anybody from seeking a college degree if you're so inclined.
From a trend perspective, if we're coming back to this in 2 years' time, what do you think we're going to be talking about then, and how much of today's conversation will still be relevant in 2 years' time?
I hope, and this is hope, no pun intended. This is hope, not a prediction per se.
Yeah.
I hope that the anxiety about AI has somewhat subsided and left the conversation. And we will see that a lot of jobs, AI is a natural part and a natural helper for the individual. And we will get over what you described earlier, where we are now, which is AI is actually causing you to do more work, more fact-checking, and the engines are getting better. So I think that's one thing I would say in 2 years I would hope is going to happen. The second thing I believe is we're going to see a surge in productivity. And therefore we are going to see, essentially more wealth being created. But what we got to make sure is that wealth creation is not only happening in a very small portion of society, because otherwise we're just going to increase the wealth gap in the country, and we're going to see the friction that we're already seeing very manifest in our political discourse getting worse and worse and worse. So that is the second thing that I think we have to really think through. How are we going to make sure that people have dignified jobs, meaningful jobs that can make them not only a good living, but really provide them with a path to the middle class?
In the remaining time that we have, was there anything else that you wanted to share, to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, I want to share one thing. I think we covered a lot, Hope, but I want to share one thing which I don't know whether you recall when you were in college or in high school, but I certainly recall, which was that feeling that, every course is kind of taught to the middle, you struggle to be ahead of the class and whatever. I think with AI now we have an enormous opportunity for personalized education. So Hope learns differently than Michael. That's a given. We have different ways of learning. We have different attitudes. AI can now help us to customize this to your personal style of learning. We are putting a lot of money and a lot of effort in making that become a reality. And I think as a result, actually learning and education will be more joyful and more exciting to more people, and not just the people that were always ahead of the class and always the overachievers, but a lot of people that sometimes felt left out in the middle and a little left behind. So I think there's exciting times ahead.
There's a book by Neil Stephenson, who is a sci-fi writer. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. It's called The Diamond Age.
I haven't read the book.
Yeah, well, in this book, and one of my favorite books, there is a book that is basically sort of AI driven, and it really teaches this young girl how to go through life, and it's very personalized. So it's just bringing to mind that. But if we do have that sort of personalized experience, don't we lose more of the monoculture that has helped to gel society? And what do we lose if everything is so personalized?
No, I don't think we necessarily do. Think about the classroom. Think about a classroom that you remember, right? There were always the kids that were in front of the class, raising their hand, interacting with the teacher. And then there was the people in the back. They were kind of like, cruising along, but
Sleeping.
often not willing, either sleeping or not willing to really engage because they were embarrassed, right? And think about it from an immigrant perspective. We have a huge business teaching immigrant children English, right? often that is the basic hurdle. They don't speak English well enough. So what do? They sit in the back of the class. At home, there's no English spoken. They speak Spanish, or they speak Urdu, or they speak some other language, right? And that basically is a wasted mind. It's a wasted mind because that kid, she has something to offer. And what we want to make sure with the personalized education is that they can come into the fold of the classroom, that the classroom is a vibrant system of people exchanging ideas and battling out ideas. That is something that we've probably seen in some higher level courses with 10 people in the class. We want to see this happening for everybody.
I like that. I really appreciate you sharing your perspectives on all these complicated and intertwined issues with me today, and I hope to have you back on really soon.
Hope, thank you so much. It's been a privilege and a passion of mine.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Hope.
Bye.